And you should at this point have the arm extruded and be at the head. If you don't have this point, all I did was I clicked on the edge, I double clicked it for a ring selection, and then I did an extrude and scale, which I can always do by holding the shift, and I can use the scale tool to extrude. I can also use the move tool to extrude. So you want to start with this shape for the head. Once again, make sure that you're always looking in your front and your side views. And I can extrude this by going to shift, extruding up, and I probably want to extrude up to the chin. Now there's an angle on this, and that's actually probably okay. I know that sounded very confident. That's completely okay. You can have this angle here because the face moves at an angle. If you want it to be a little less severe, you can rotate it. And you want to think about how the face moves. The mouth can be modeled at an angle. It can be modeled straight across, because what you're ultimately going to do is match that movement. What you do want to consider, though, are the cheekbones. And so your cheekbones come up. So I'll go ahead and extrude up to about the mouth. Do another scale. And once again, if your pictures aren't completely lined up, like mine over here, you can just ignore that. And I'm going to leave this rounder even though I do have this lip indent, because that really only is a couple edges that are coming in. So I want to modify those when I refine it rather than get every bend and bob done when I'm modeling it. Now I want to do an extrude up right below the nose. That's going to give me that cheekbone. And it's also going to give me an edge so that my face or my nose doesn't completely distort. You can also look at your model and see if it's proportional. I know from doing this before that I've made this face too large. So I'll probably look at it and adjust that before I come to doing the head or the nose. But I am going to extrude up to the eyes. Now the eyes, if you think about the bottom of them, they angle up. If you think about the way that eye curves and kind of goes to the ear, it angles up. But then at the top of the head, my eye tends to angle down a little. So I can extrude right to the bottom of the eye and then do another extrude up. But perhaps this is where I rotate it so that it's either straight on or maybe even has a little bit of an angle. That's too severe what I did there, but now most of you will probably be doing your hair as another piece if you would like. You know, any real detail in the hair. It takes so long with kind of cutting and edge flow. And the other thing is, if you think about, like, if you move your eyebrows or your mouth or anything like that, you're not getting a lot of movement on your hair, right? You're getting a lot of movement on that skin and that face, but not as much on the hair. So what you want to do is typically model that as a separate piece, or use a simulation. And there are hair simulation software, or there is out there. There's one in this program right now, and all the reviews are going to talk about two different ones, all the tutorials. This is the newest one. And I think it changed around 2017. Don't quote me 100% on that. But really be wary if you find tutorials from 2015, 2016 Maya. I'll double check what date that especially happened. That said, you remember what happens to the computers when you try to simulate large amounts of stuff? You're already going to be moving it, and you're going to be doing your first animation, so adding simulation in there can make it lag even more. So it might be something where, in fact, I'd recommend get more familiar with the settings before you do that. So we extrude up again. And if you want this to be straight up and down, remember once again, aside from just using the scale tool here, on the, Z and X axis, you can also use the Y axis and just push it down. That will always straighten everything to being a straight line as long as you do it enough. Now, what I tend to do at this point is I select opposite side edges, because what I'm going to do is something called a bridge. That's where you take two edges and you make a face in between them. The interesting thing about an edge is that they cannot be touching to do a bridge. So if I were to select these two and say bridge, it absolutely won't, because they share a vertice. You can only bridge on areas that share a vertex, or that don't share a vertice, unless of course they changed it since then. They have not. Every once in a while I do a lesson and I say you can't do this, and then there's been an update and you can. So you can always try it, but as for the way they do bridges, you generally can't. What I do is I just shift select the opposite sides and then hit bridge. I want to weld these to the point in the head, and right now this has a seam here and this one doesn't, so I want to go ahead and add one division. If you don't need to do that on your model, don't follow this step. If you had 2 or 3 lines, you would add 2 or 3 divisions. And then from there, I'm going to find these little vertices right here that aren't connected. If I'm having a hard time finding them, I can just grab them and move them. And then what I'll do is a target weld. So just drag, drag, and as you saw the other day, make sure that you don't have one selected when you do a target weld, or else it will weld all of them together, even the one you haven't selected, by dragging on it because it was selected in the scene. I think I accidentally did that like 3 times the other day. Boop. Now at this point, if you want to see what your model looks like in general, you can do a 1 for, you can hit 1 on your keyboard for the unsmooth preview. You can do a 2 to see what the wireframe looks like and then what it will look like smooth. And you can do a 3 just to see the smoothed version. Remember, it's going to smooth by taking the averages between 2 edges. So if I saw an area that's really smooth, something I didn't like maybe I think I'm losing too much information here, I can always do a multi-cut by hitting that control, going around, and then if I cut that, what you'll actually see is a little more movement and a little less smoothing, because once again it's taking the average between 2 points. If I'm starting to get these really dramatic loops like I have in here, I may want to refine it. by selecting in here and doing that control. Come on, select the perpendicular one, buddy. It's like, no. I'm not going to do that at this angle. Well, I'll mess with this later. Perhaps when you're not waiting for the next step. Now, for checking for proportions, you can do this now, you can do it later, you can do it multiple times. But what I do like to do is do a face select, turning off multi-cut. And I can copy this object by going to Mesh, Mirror, and hitting the box. Or I could just actually go to Mirror, it'll give me options as well. So if I go to Mesh, Mirror, I'm going to see that I can change the axis that it's mirroring on. If you hit Mirror and it vanishes completely like that, it's because your direction is probably inaccurate. So mine was correct, it started on the negative, but I put it on the positive to show that. It'll also sometimes get the wrong axis. So like, I just made a terrifying nightmare creature there. X turns out to be white, right? And let's just check Z. Z's overlapping on itself, so I don't want that either. Now, you can do offset if you want it to stretch more or less. Cut geometry is going to go ahead and cut anything that it thinks shouldn't be necessarily used. Now, these are not connected. There are things you can do that will connect them. But I wanted to show that because notice what he has here. What's he have in his back? He's got a huge gap. His back and bottom are not connected. And so when you cut something in half like that, boop, boop, boop. Let's go back to here. Sometimes it helps to do that same thing we've been doing, getting the edge select, grabbing that whole ring, and then scaling it so that everything is even. It's going to take the averages, so maybe that moves it over too much. So I might scale it and then move it back where I want it. I can also do symmetry on and off. Later on, you know how you've been moving objects and scaling them using move? There actually is a symmetry section here too. So if I grabbed this and I went ahead and did my symmetry, or there is a symmetry as well, but if I did the mirror, my students tend to have less things go insane when they do a mirror. Mirror. Nope. So I need to be in object mode. Mirror. The symmetry will auto-connect these. The thing I find is sometimes when they auto-connect, it uses a vertice threshold, the same as this, but you might not realize that something is indeed overlapped. So I do ask students at least at first to check this manually, and later on they can do it the easy way. From here, you can go ahead and select both of them. Select both sides, hit combine. And a lot of students think, okay, that's all I have to do, right? Except now when I hit 3, sometimes it works and sometimes I get these weird little crumples if you start seeing those. And that's a lot of times because if I go back to vertice mode, I start moving them around. You'll notice these points actually aren't connected. That the model is connected, but the vertices themselves haven't been, bless you, connected. So what I can do is just select all these middle vertices. I can go into permanent selection mode by hitting Control and Alt at the same, nope, Control and Shift at the same time, sorry. if you hit Control and Shift at the same time and select, it will go ahead and select everything, even if it's already been selected. If you hold Shift and do that, it will either select or deselect based on if it's already been highlighted. Now these two little ones should not be selected because that won't be good. But once I select this whole row, I can go to Edit Mesh Merge, and it'll say anything that's 0.1 away from each other, which hopefully these should be because they've been mirrored, will be welded together. If I wanted, I could increase or decrease that, but be careful because you see what's happening. It says, oh, those are close. In fact, if you want to see something truly terrifying, you start noticing what's happening down here because we have lots of vertices that are all very close together. So ideally, you want to use that mirror model, and you probably want to keep this thing at 0.1. It said, be careful. Now, if you're getting weird results like that, sometimes you can get to like 0.5 or 0.1. Okay. So we should have that. And now, when we move them, they should move. Well, it looks like I might have a soft selection or something on. Or it's just affecting the smooth because remember the smooth takes the averages. Now you can do that as many or as little times as you'd like. Yes. Yep. So we'll show mirroring one more time. And I'll go ahead and stop